physics. I think there's still huge appetite for that, but when you consider the billions of dollars that get spent at CERN, the US space program and beyond, I'd suggest to you that there are substantial taboos and areas that deserve, I'm not so talking necessarily about theft, but I am talking about misallocation, personal and political agendas, academic careers that sometimes go insufficiently questioned. And so I would urge you still to argue for greater journalism and less science.
Thank you very much. Peter, I will let you choose the first thing.
Well, I want to give Emily the chance to respond. And now I'll hold the microphone. This is the last time we do that.
Yeah, I'll also make a point for a balance. I mean, that's what you did, right? We need, of course, we need to talk about science and explain the science. Also say, of course, we need to investigate. I mean, that's our basic job as a journalist. Every piece should be a piece of investigation. You need to call the other parts, competitors. You need to cross your sources for every piece. But yeah.
But he says you're forgetting something. There's misappropriation. There's too much money maybe going to space science, and you're not asking that question, I guess.
Yeah, well, when there's a chance, I mean, when there is something to dig it up. I mean, of course. But I would say, don't necessarily search for something that, whenever there's something new, like, a great discovery, great new planet, don't always ask, okay, but where does the money come from, or is there a problem? I mean, because most of the time, there's nothing to say. It's okay. I mean, there are different stories in science, and whenever, I mean, I'm a journalist that specializes in astronomy, and you can say there's not much fraud in there. There is some, and whenever there is, I dig it up and I'll write about it. But most of the time, it's
how many fraud cases did you bring up?
I don't know. I wrote 10 maybe 10 stories, big stories about fraud and oversold missions and missions that don't work. We don't say about it, and it costs $1 billion I never forget to point a problem when there's one, and we should not.
Here's actually somebody who wants to argue that.
There are a couple of things which I'd like to say. I mean, why my view would be different from a lot of people here, because one thing is I'm from a developing country, India. Second thing is, until 1 month ago I was a student myself, and now I moved into journalism. So I have a unique view of things in that I can see from the other side what it's like. And what I feel now is, I can't generalize to all scientists obviously, but the scientific establishment, if I were to use the word, there's a certain arrogance in the way they look at things. As in, we are the scientists. I would use the phrase that scientists have become the new priests. I know that I appreciate the wonder of science and its beauty and so on. That's why I wanted to become a scientist. But now from the other side, I can see that just using the word lay people, I find that somewhat condescending. And yes, there is an arrogance that we know something that you don't, and we're doing something really, really, really noble, and therefore you should, have deference towards us and so on. So I find that quite arrogant.
So you said you wanted to appreciate the beauty of science, that why you wanted to become a scientist. Now you're a journalist because you want to do...
Yeah, I've seen, I mean, from what I've seen inside of academia, I'm sort of repelled by it in some sense. So,
Thank you.
Okay, we have one more remark on this side.
Well, I was going to make it brief, but I'll make it brief and then you can cut me off if I get going. I was going to suggest that you should actually rename your talk to Science Journalism needs more journalism and less hype, because there's so much hype. And I think a case of that was the stem cell guy this morning. He was eloquent, he's obviously a brilliant guy, but he basically stood up there and gave an advertisement for stem cells. And meanwhile, there was questions about, what about this whole other awful industry that spawned because of, all the hype about stem cells? These scientists have been talking about this for 10 years now. We've got this industry out there that's exploiting that hype. And
do you think science journalism is helping that hype?
Yes, I do. Because we just take what these scientists say, we're all going to have personalized medicine. But the thing is, there are good stories to be done, but I think we need to hold the scientific community accountable. And the last question this morning to him was, should governments be intervening here, and he sort of dodged the question. I thought it was very
Thank you. There's one remark over there, and then it's time for a remark right here on the side.
One more from this side.
Yes.
Sitting? You can
Okay.
sit, you don't have to-
Well, dear science journalists, I would like to convince you to vote for us in your final conclusion. Why? I would like to give you 3 reasons. First one, yesterday, Meet the Editor, we found that young science journalists were not able to really present their case. It is what we call in German the soup of letters. Nothing structures, no headline, no who, what, whatever. Of course, okay. And even more so, even the Nature editor said storytelling. He was pushing for storytelling and having intellectual food at the dinner table. I found that very convincing. Secondly, Jack Andrew was talking about the silicon data giants. Who has put his finger on it? Not the science journalist. It has been one of the, in Germany, a cultural journalist, Frank Schirmayer, who has become very famous in Europe for that. Thirdly, if I think we are a weird breed of hamburgers, and we are apt to extinct if we don't get our act together, if we continue fighting science journalists about who is a real journalist and who is a communicator. There's a Cold War, and this Cold War will kill journalism once and forever. So please vote for us to reinforce our position. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, the other side, we have some answers here.
I don't really think that science and science journalists and regular journalists or other journalists are really at odds, and they do have to have the balance, as Emily was saying. But I think it's true that scientists are often arrogant, which proves Emily's point that there needs to be more education and there needs to be journalists who are acting as a bridge between the general public and scientists, because otherwise that information never gets out. So I think first people have to understand science before you start digging into the dirt of science.
Here.
So they understand
Is it purely a one-way street? I mean, you're saying basically we need to educate the public. Do we maybe also need to educate the scientists sometimes?
Yes, I think it works both ways. And when you're out there reporting a science story well, then that does help the scientists understand why it's important for them to be communicative and transparent.
But you, sorry, there's another right next to you. Yes?
So I'm a scientist, and so I have 3 things to say. First of all,
Somebody say boo.
I don't know if you guys have ever talked to scientists or taken a poll of how much they make, but you're not talking about huge amounts of fraud and money being misallocated. Sometimes there are missions that go down and they don't get off the ground and a lot of money is spent, but it's called R&D. For the hype point, I absolutely agree that there shouldn't be hype, but as a scientist who found water on a planet, every journalist that I spoke to, oh, does that mean there's alien life? Oh, tell me about the alien life. Does this mean we're gonna go there and, no. And as a scientist, there's a lot of rigor that goes into all of the work that you do, and you're paid very little money to do it, and you want to be known for the good work that you've done that is accurate. And a lot of journalism, and my fear when I hear this, is that all of that journalism is going to become hype and not fact. Which leads me to my third point, which is if we have a limited amount of resources, because sharing scientific knowledge is so important, then it will go to these pandemics, and people need the right information. They don't need the sensationalized information, because we have people who don't believe in global warming, they don't believe in vaccinating their kids, and these are huge problems. And with the limited amount of resources we have, we need to be telling them the facts, not some sensationalized story or some angle edit that makes scientists look like the bad guys. They need to be listened to.
Just really quickly, so you're saying you think if science journalists become more like other journalists, we would be not as good as doing that job of educating?
Absolutely.
Okay, response from here.
Hi, hello, Nicholas. I am a scientist, but social scientist working in science, technology, and society. And my point is going to be rather to define the terms. What do we understand by journalism and less science? I would rather say more journalism about science in society, about science in the making, like showing everyday practices. When we talk about how little some scientists in certain countries make, that is part of the more journalism speech, and not only hype stuff about recent discoveries or new technologies or economy of promises of what we're going to do with nanotechnology, but more about everyday life, a sort of Grey's Anatomy, but Grey's science, like showing how scientists, researchers work in everyday life. That has to do with more journalism and showing the everyday practice with criticism, but with a ground view of the practice. And a last point about climate change, for instance. We're not going to make progress in the public's understanding of climate change or the construction of social problems with more facts, but with more concrete understanding of how scientists work and which are the weapons to construct those facts and those claims, and how the opponents or the climate skeptics have their networks of power. So it's by making explicit the resources of each argument that we're going to make progress.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, passionate argument for more journalism in science journalism. You don't agree?
No, I'm a science journalist from Argentina, and I guess I really think that you're being blind. You don't see the big picture. The climate change deniers are getting stronger. The anti-vaccine movement is growing.
Yeah.
In Argentina, the best seller is an astrologist. So how can you don't see the picture that we need more science, even from those journalists that don't write about science? They write about astrology, the horoscope. So the main editors in newspaper, at least in Argentina, they don't give a space for science stories because they think that it doesn't matter. They think the science doesn't sell. So we need more science in our stories and to educate or tell the other journalists that they need to know more about science to write in their stories.
But let me just ask you one question. I mean, isn't it possible that when we as science journalists pitch a story to our editor, for instance, I mean, say, you know, in a newspaper, you don't have a science page, isn't it our job then maybe, aren't we doing our job as journalists not very well if they think it's not important? Shouldn't we be?
I think that the main word in this new information ecosystem is clickbait. Yes, in a newspaper they see which are the stories that at the end of the day have more links in, and you see a woman naked, a story about how you can grow your breasts, they will have more clicks. So I guess the editors should know more about science, and I think at least in Latin America, I think you can't project this idea from all the world like it's not the same. Every region has its own cultural thing. I really think that in Latin America it's not the same situation as perhaps in Great Britain. So you can't say this like it's a big formula, global formula. Every region has its own history with science.
Thanks. I can honestly say I've never clicked a story about growing bigger breasts.
There is a story about penis sizes that seems to do very well.
I'm not going to comment on that.
Okay, I'm happy to be following that. So with respect, those of you who are concerned about science illiteracy and think that the answer is simply more information, more education, you're really not paying any attention to a huge amount of social science that's accumulated over the last couple of decades that shows that this is not an information problem. This is a problem of connecting to people's lives, connecting to their values, connecting to the things that are most important to them. This is not, teaching grade school or elementary school, where all we have to do is give them a textbook and look, they will suddenly accept the body of knowledge of climate change. That is not what the evidence shows. It's very clear that some of the people with the most information about atmospheric physics are nonetheless climate deniers. Why? Because they don't make the connection to their lives, to their own values. Second point, it's just as important. And I'm sorry, it would be nice if the deficit model was true, and if all we needed to do was just give people more information, and then hallelujah, they would come to us. But it's utterly false, and the evidence is overwhelming on that. The second point.
How many are you going to make?
I'm a professor. I fill time. You'll see soon enough. The second point, I think, that people are ignoring is that there's already a huge infrastructure in place to communicate science, that there's a whole sort of pseudo-news system associated with universities, scientific research institutions. Meanwhile, what's happening to journalism? Independent journalism is contracting, especially in the US, and soon the same forces that are creating these terrible problems in the US will apply elsewhere. What we desperately need to reinforce is the journalism. Scientific information, the distribution of science information, that infrastructure is in place. It has its own economic system that does not rely on the vulnerable revenues that journalists have to rely on. This is where the emphasis has to be.
Okay, just and one tiny question. I mean, you're not a journalist. Maybe you were once, but it's okay. Do you think science journalism is really missing, doing something that it shouldn't be doing, or is it missing a specific angle?
Well, sure. Science journalism is far from perfect. In some ways, there's more and better science journalism now than ever before, but the economic pressures, the revenue pressures are extreme. So, of course, if we're generalizing, we would never want to say that science journalism is without flaw and that we always get the science right. Of course, that's not the case. On the other hand, where's the critical deficit? The critical deficit is in resources to practice journalism. That is what we desperately need.
Okay, thank you. Someone wants to reply on this side?
Yeah, the rules of the House should ban people from changing the motion leads, right? Because Andrew started by saying that he was not going to argue for less science, right? How can you? Science is arguing on the basis of evidence. You're not arguing against any of those two things. But you didn't argue for more journalism. I don't even understand what more journalism is. If it's more spaces, then I'm with you. But I don't think that's what you were arguing. You wound up arguing for better journalism, and that changes the motion completely.
Yeah, it's true.
So if you change it to science journalism needs better journalism, and then more science will follow and be better told, I'll gladly move over there. That's not what I read.
All right, I think we've had enough confusion about this particular motion. There is one last remark, and then we'll move to the other one.
If you look for sources, there are extra sources. I'm presenting here a foundation who gives grants to journalists, and we never have, nobody applies for it. I never see science journalists applying for money for digging into interesting stories that are untold. Especially for the Europeans, we have a lot of money.
What's your website? What's your website? Yes. Where is it?
They all said they want to do that, and so they're not coming to you.
We ask them to do cross-border investigative journalism. So you have to collaborate. This is also something you don't do. Collaborate.
There's an extra cash. Okay, well, you know where to go. So I think the vote is clear. We need more journalism. Next motion. And this is picking up on something what Kai said during his, it was not last night at the bar, I know for sure. And just to ask about your own experience. Do science journalists feel that other journalists in their newsroom or other news don't really respect them as real journalists?
Do we want to see whether anybody wants to cross the on the first process?
No, they should have crossed before that. So you're free to cross anytime you want. So if you don't agree with this motion, you're on this side. If you agree, so you have the experience that people don't really see you as real journalists, then you go sit on this side.
Yeah, we are going to make you get up just a few times, so...
Right, well, again, everyone should cross at the moment they change their mind.
Yeah, this is so hard to...
I see an interesting defector over here, but I'll ask her in a second.
Yeah.
This is interesting. I mean, you've argued that basically science journalists are doing the right thing, and yet you agree that our colleagues don't see us as real journalists.
Yeah.
So why? I'm not going to give you the mic.
Okay. Well, it makes sense to me. The fact that science is not well understood in the society, it means that it's also maybe not well understood among journalists. And based on my own experience, sometimes, a lot of times actually, journalists will actually call me up as a source, because I'm a science journalist. Journalists from broad media, general media will call me to tell them about this new Mars mission or whatever. I'm like, I'm a journalist, so it's like we're in this little world, this bubble that is an like or something that is not understood by the rest of the society. This is why I think we need to educate. This is maybe not the point we're on, but I think it makes sense to me.
Right, so you're saying we don't only need to educate the public, we need to educate our colleagues.
Well, because they're part of the, journalists are among the society, right? So, yeah, I think they need to maybe know more about science too.
Here.
Peter, you want to take?
Well, I wonder because I was a journalist for a long time, and I was in the newsroom for a long time, and this has very much been my experience. So I'm very curious to hear from people who said, no, I don't feel anything in the sense that my colleagues from economics pages, they see me as real journalists. Are you all totally convinced of that? Is that what you're saying? Interesting, very interesting. And on this side.
Yeah, I very often had the situation that people ask me, oh, you're a science journalist, you read about medicine, can you look at something on my back, explain me what it is? Or nobody comes to this idea and say, okay, you're a sports journalist, were you a professional football player or something like that? I do better play soccer than a lot of my sports colleagues from the radio. So it's a very old problem that they say, oh, there's a scientific problem. Maybe you ask the scientists in our radio station, and he said, no, I'm not a scientist anymore. I'm a journalist. But nobody comes to idea and asks, yeah, you're an expert in economics.
One more thing, I think that the other journalists see ourselves like cheerleaders, that we have to say whatever about any science discovery. So it's a wrong image they have from us. I guess it's really.
And is it a coincidence that this incident exists? That they see it this way, or have we maybe done something to reinforce that?
I guess perhaps we are very enthusiastic about science and what's the role of science in society, and we see perhaps another journalist from the economics and politics, they don't see the importance of science in society, so perhaps we are very curious. Perhaps some of the elements of science, we get contagious from those elements. They need the idea of curiosity and, well, the evidence, so I guess it has something to do with that.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Two here?
Yeah, just to add to that from a different perspective a bit, this is something that a lot of my friends who work in journal newspapers have, is that when you need to cut something, science is usually the first thing that will be cut if you have a nice political story or economic story or maybe a match is coming up. So it's the kind of thing that is very easy to remove. They don't take it very seriously, so pretty much everything takes precedent over that, whatever it is. It could be something that is as big as a